Welcome in, everyone, to the evolution of health, wealth, and healing. I'm Joan Kaler. I'm your host. I'm so thrilled that you're with us today. I am an international teacher, therapist, consultant. My whole purpose in life is to help free you from pain and suffering emotionally, mentally, spiritually through emotional freedom techniques and other mind-body interventions. So contact me if you're interested. Today, I am so blessed to have the most exciting, wonderful guest. You won't believe this. Dr. Craig Weiner has graciously joined in to talk about how he and his partner and wife, Alina, have put together this fantastic program on emotional freedom techniques and matrix re-imprinting. So first thing I want to introduce is Dr. Weiner, Craig. Thank you for joining us.
Craig is just fine. So fun to be here, Joan. You're rocking the world with this show. It's fabulous.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm trying to get the word out there to tell people what works.
I think that's important.
This is what works. Tell everyone a little bit about yourself. Who are you and how did you get interested in EFT?
Well, that's a big question, and there's a lot there, so I'll try to keep it short. So who am I? Right, how do you answer that? I'll give some categories just because it's easy that way. So I'm a chiropractor. I've done that for going on 30 years. I'm an EFT and matrix re-imprinting trainer. Been doing that over the last multiple years, along with my wife, Alina Frank. I'm a practitioner, coach, mentor, supervisor. I love to teach. It's my passion. I love EFT and different energy psychology modalities. And like you, I'd say we're both in the same boat. We're here and we're driven by a passion to serve. We're driven by holding place for people to transform their lives and to let go of suffering and to create the life that they were meant to live and know that they can live but forget sometimes because of the circumstances, their health, their relationships, their work, and we remember that. So I think we serve as mirrors and safe places for that to happen in and maybe catalyze that. So that's like the doingness part. I would say that also I try to walk my talk and live what I preach so that in that way I can be a model or at least something that people can point to and say, you know what, if he's doing it, maybe I can, that kind of a thing. Not for the ego, but just because that's, I think, what we were meant to do. And right. Many of us grew up without those kinds of examples of seeing somebody doing the work that they love, having a relationship that's over the top, wonderful. And I think sometimes for me, when I had examples of that, that helped reinforce for me that it was possible. So I do my best to walk authentically that way. As far as how I found EFT, I was very, very skeptical. I'll be very honest. I poo-pooed it. The story I've told is back in, this is maybe 15 years ago, I first heard about EFT from Dr. Mercola's website, right? Joe Mercola has like the #1 alternative and complementary health website on the web. And it was growing and growing, and I was a regular subscriber. And all of a sudden, one day, he started talking about this EFT tapping thing, right? And right about the same time, he was also starting to sell a lot of products and nutraceuticals and things, which are fine. But the way that he was promoting this tapping to help with headaches and pain and PTSD and relationships problems and financial problems, and I was just like, Joe, I know you probably got your finger in this pot somehow, and you know what? It's like, fine, let somebody else be, the dupe on this one, and I put it to the side. So I really did. So I just really ignored it. And at that time, I had moved to Whidbey Island, which is in the Pacific Northwest, where I live now. It's a magical place. And as a chiropractor, I had always put on educational programs introducing my patients to different types of complementary healthcare. And I would have acupuncturists and homeopaths and all kinds of different providers come in. And being in a new place, I didn't know a lot of the providers, and I hadn't seen many of them speak. I had lived in Berkeley Berkeley area before that, in California. So I knew hundreds of providers and amazing presenters. And suddenly I was in a place where the presenters maybe weren't so good, and I was just feeling a little awkward. And how do I do this presentation thing with good quality presentations for my patients and the community? And right about that time, there was a wonderful opportunity that Bruce Lipton and Rupert Sheldrake had come to the area near Seattle and done a weekend. And there's so much of a big circle with this, but I'll keep it brief, is that when they came out, part of the program was they stuck 2 like living room sofa chairs on the stage. They sat down and just had a conversation like they were meeting in front of a living room fireplace with a glass of wine and just talked to each other. And there were just, maybe 500 of us just listening in to the living room chat. And I said, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to just create these, what I ended up calling transformational dialogues and conversations. And that way I could be in the conversation, I could direct it or lead it or back off and just shut up and while the person spoke if they were interesting and inspiring. And that just felt like the right way to do it. So I decided I'm going to do that. And it's funny because I told Bruce that day, I came up to the stage, I said, you are fabulous, and someday we're going to share a stage. Now, we haven't actually been on the same stage, but I've interviewed him multiple times, so we've shared an audio stage, which was a dream come true for me and Rupert as well. But anyway, because I did for years what you're doing right now, so I love interviewing. Anyway, long story short, I decided, you know what, first one, I'm going to try something for this dialogue that I know nothing about. I'm just going to kind of break with tradition. I'm not going to bring healthcare paradigm that I know or technique that I know anything about. And I started thinking, what about that EFT thing? I really don't know anything about it. I poo-pooed it. I didn't really give it an honest shot. So I just looked online to see if in my little island there was somebody that did this, that could talk about it. And there was one person, I think her name was Alina Frank, right? Yeah, definitely. And I called her and I said, I'm giving these public presentations. Would you like to come? And so she said, well, I'm interested. And so she came to the office and she did a demonstration with some of my staff. And one of them was trying to quit smoking. And I was pretty impressed. And so I said, okay, let's do this thing. And anyway, there's more to the story, but basically she came, it went very well. I said, I need to learn more about this. There was a training in Seattle she was putting on with a psychologist like a month or 2 later in the fall. And I think that was 2007.
Wow.
So it was like 10 years ago. And so that's how I got introduced to EFT. So I was a complete skeptic and then I'm a complete convert. And so I love skeptics. I think it's appropriate to be skeptical about somebody saying, well, it can help this and this and this. Because as a chiropractor, I've had patients bring vitamins and said, please sell this vitamin, right? Because it can do all these things, etc. And so I was appropriately skeptical. But when I started to see the evidence and started to experience the results, well, the tide started to turn.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I was never skeptical. I was introduced to it way back in 1996 by my then supervisor and psychologist. And he took a course from Fred Gallo, who's past president of ASAP. Sure. And then he thought, whoa, I want to learn more. So he went out and studied under Roger Callahan.
Right. Field therapy. Yep.
And said, okay, I have signed this contract that I can't share anything with you, but there are different algorithms that I can teach you. So then he started teaching me different algorithms. I started using them with my clients, getting some interesting results, and I went, whoa.
Yep. I think a lot of people experience that. Whoa.
Yep. Whoa, the bro effect. Or I like this is weird.
Yeah, that one we get a lot, don't we?
What just happened?
Yep.
Or the deer in headlights, I can't find it. Where did it go?
Right.
All that good stuff.
Yep.
And then I start to giggle and I say, well, you released it. We smoothed out your energy system. We got that sucker out of your meridian system. Or this never happened to me before. So all those experiences, of course, just juiced me. And I wanted to learn more and more and more.
Right. Sure.
And here I am. And I'm going to continue to learn more and more and more from you and Alina. And I'm so excited. And Suzanne and everybody that you bring on board. I'm so excited to learn from you all.
There's so much to learn. There's no end to it, is there really? We just keep incorporating and taking it deeper. And as we witness more that unfolds and more people healing in different ways, our capacity for understanding that anything is possible just gets validated.
Mm-hmm.
And, I'm very careful with how I talk about it, and I never promise results. I mean, as a practitioner, I work with people around the world via Zoom and Skype, et cetera. And I'm very clear that every single case, every single person is a different set of circumstances and a different set of beliefs and a different set of challenges that they face. And those are all unique. So I never make promises or guarantees because everybody has their own timing.
Right.
I think that sometimes as practitioners, we so dearly want people to achieve the changes that they want. But we can't have an attachment because sometimes it's not safe for too much change too quickly. Sometimes they're not ready or prepared for that. They're not resilient enough to be able to make those big changes that quick. So we really have to keep our expectations, our hopes and desires put to the side, for that. And everybody has their own timing. I've seen people have miraculous results in a single session, and other ones that have made huge changes over 3 months and 6 months and a year. And that's appropriate for them. So I think we have to be careful about our expectations or promises or hopes as a practitioner.
You bring up so many good points, such wisdom in that, yes, individual results do vary.
Sure. That's with anything.
And sometimes EFT doesn't work for some people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's hard to know. I find a lot of times people think, well, my issue's not emotional.
Oh.
Right? I've got a physical condition or whatever. A story I often tell on myself is early on in my relationship with Alina, I was working out in the yard, and I'd been working out all day, and I came in basically bent over, kind of limping and obviously grimacing in pain. And she's like, "Are you okay?" And I'm a chiropractor, so I know how to take care of my back. It doesn't freak me out. It doesn't scare me. It was just like, oh, I just need to lie down, get some ice, do my stretch, right? And she's like, well, do you want to tap on that? Now, you got to understand that as a chiropractor for at that point, 15, 20 years into it and well-established and know what I know, it's like, that's my niche, right? If anything I know about is back pain. But we were pretty early in the relationship, so what was I going to say? No, right? No, we're not going to do your tool, because she had come from tapping way before I did. And so I said, it's not an emotional issue. I spent all day in the yard digging and doing what I was doing, so I know what I did. I know what I need to do for it. But if you want to tap on me or whatever, then I'd be happy to, honey, right? So I'm starting to tap, and even though I've got this back pain and it's sharp and it's stabbing and it's spasming, and yeah, even though it's a really annoyance because I got a lot more to do, right? And I've got a lot more on, there's a lot of pressure that I got to get this all done. I'm selling the house, and at that time I was going through selling a house from a divorce and personal. Anyways, I'm sitting there. It's like, yeah, I have so much to do, and I'm like the one that's responsible for doing all of it. I'm the one that has to get it all done. I'm the one that's been like having to do all this hard. And like the more I was into it, the more and more I was quite angry. And as I was feeling really pissed about having this back pain and the responsibility and the pressure. And so, we only tapped for probably 10 minutes. And she said, all right, check in on your back. And I stood up straight, and there was no pain. And excuse me, but I said, oh. Yes. What do I do now on Monday when I go see patients? How do I know if their back pain's coming from what they did physically, from some emotional reaction, from something in between? And so there was that kind of light bulb moment of, I don't know. Maybe I'll never know. Maybe for everybody it's some combination. And maybe I just have to have an approach that deals from multiple perspectives. So that was kind of a light bulb moment for me, that physical pain could be a direct result of negative emotional intensity that manifests as very real physical pain. I think that the word psychosomatic is both appropriate, but also been vilified in the sense of psyche, soma, mind, body. Everything is a mind-body reaction. you can't have a negative thought if it doesn't lead to an emotion that then leads to a physical response and stress hormones and then pain, inflammation. So those things are wired and interconnected so intimately that physical, emotional complaints and symptoms are tremendously intertwined and almost impossible to separate.
Yeah. When clients come into my office and they talk about their life and they mention traumas or they mention unhappy events, I say, well, do you think you're over that? Is that gone? Oh, yes, I dealt with that. That's over. I've been talking about that with other therapists for years. And then I say, you know what? I'd like to ask your arm because I do applied kinesiology.
Mm-hmm.
And I say, let me explain what applied kinesiology is. It's the mind-body connection. It's like biofeedback for the body, and we can access your unconscious by me muscle testing you. So sometimes I have them do breathing to make sure they're grounded, or sometimes I bring out my earthing mat if I don't have time for all that, and I just say, get on the mat. And then I show them the strength and the weakness and what that means, health or disease, yes or no, the binary system. And then I say, okay, think of that problem. And 9 times out of 10, the arm bounces or goes completely down. And I said, well, I believe that you believe that you're over it, but your arm and muscles are telling us something different. So we need to revisit that. So the mind,
Yeah, the piece that I would add to that is, while I don't use applied kinesiology as a tool, I strongly have a belief and a knowing and experience that, and I've seen so many times, what's sometimes referred to as psychological reversal or secondary gain, but basically it's the idea of this. Let's just say that I was injured at work. Okay, nobody wants to be injured at work, and I lose time off work, and I lose money, and I lose my sense of who I amness as if I'm not working, and that's an important part of me. But perhaps I was in a relationship that was very strained, and all of a sudden now I'm getting a lot of care. I'm getting a lot of attention. I'm getting a lot of sympathy. I'm now starting to get a disability check. I'm now not having to get up at 4 a.m. to get to work by 7, etc. And there's a part of me that absolutely wants to get my life back and the regular money back and all those things. And there's another part of me that's like, that job, that was really pushing my body way too hard anyway. So there's another part of me that's often unconscious that's saying, even though I'm going to physical therapy or the chiropractor or the doctor, and I'm taking the medication, I'm taking the time to do this, and I'm doing my exercise, and there's a very big part of me that of course wants to get better, there's often some less aware unconscious part of me that's saying, maybe you don't. Maybe this new way is a little bit better. And so whether you discover those through tapping, whether you discover that through applied kinesiology and other methodologies, finding those parts of us, and often, usually they're below the level of awareness, that are getting in the way and challenging us from resolving an issue, resolving a relationship problem, resolving a health issue, that it's really not until we uncover those safely and gently and work effectively with them that we usually find in my clients that they achieve a complete recovery. So I agree.
Sometimes when I'm dealing with someone who's very linear, they're an attorney or an engineer or an architect, or I never get a physician. That would be, as soon as they go to my website, no, that doesn't usually happen. But then I'll ask them to say some things like, I deserve to get over this problem. It's safe to get over this problem. I want to get over this problem. It's possible to get over this problem. And then I say, okay, now on a scale of 0 to 10, first I'll say, do you have any reaction to that? Is that a true statement for you?
Right.
Or if there's any hesitation, okay, then we need to talk about that first.
Yeah. An intrinsic part in EFT, certainly one is the tapping part, right? We're tapping and we're stimulating on the different meridian endpoints, and the meridian endpoints that are superficial to the skin, which means that they're very sensitive and they're very close to the surface of the skin. And so they're kind of like electrical windows to our nervous system. right? There's decreased resistance, decreased ohms. That's what's called electrical resistance there. So they're like apertures and openings that signals, electrical signals, and piezoelectric signals, basically electromagnetic signals, can then get deeper into the system, into the brain. So when we're stimulating those and we're saying certain words, right, we're starting to, in a sense, recondition or counter condition established pathways. So if there's a part of me that feels, let's just say I hurt myself because I did something I shouldn't have. I did something, so for me, the time that I fell off the roof, right, about a year ago, and I was stretching and I was under stress to get this done with the house, and I was reaching too far, and I know so much better than that, right? I'm like reaching on a ladder, and all of a sudden in slow motion I could feel the ladder slipping, and I could feel myself trying to hang on to the shingles, and and I landed and I dislocated a face. Anyway, so I hurt myself and I'm fine now. But something that could have gotten away from my healing was the embarrassment and shame of, I knew better, I shouldn't have been up there. Mm-hmm. And even though I want to get better, there's still something energetically in the way. So when we tap on the outside of hand point, the side of hand, that is said, we understand, to help to reverse or to put us in a better alignment. But ultimately, I think we have to work on those shadow issues of the shame, the guilt, the remorse that often get in the way of us being able to be okay with what happened, or what resulted, or what's going on in our life. So it's a really important consideration. And when people come in, for relationship help, money help, health help, whatever it is, we all have that. I think that when people reach out, it's reached such a pinnacle of a problem and enough suffering that's saying, look, I can't do this myself. Right? I've tried to do what I know how to do. I've tried to think myself through this, but the problem's still there. So obviously, I'm not able to fix this one. So people reach out for help for somebody that they think can. And ultimately, as an EFT practitioner, it's a collaboration, right? It's not me fixing you. Mm-hmm. I'm co-teaching a course with a neuropsychologist friend, and it's called From Healthcare Practitioner to Healer. But the question is, what's different about healing than about healthcare? And what happens in that relationship? What happens when suddenly something goes away and something resolves, or a spontaneous remission, or suddenly something that's been there for years is just gone like that? What's involved with that? What is that? What are we able to let go of? What are we able to embrace? What are we able to accept that we weren't able to accept before? What are we able to accept that we were resisting about ourselves? And so many of these pieces go into healing that I think EFT and Matrix are beautiful modalities for. In the beginning part is, even though I'm really embarrassed that I fell off the roof and I shouldn't have even been doing that, I still accept myself, or at least, and that's a tricky part, because sometimes people are not ready to say that and they're not resonant with that. So we have to modify statements sometimes as practitioners and be sensitive to the client and say, well, even though I'm embarrassed, I accept that that's how I'm feeling, because that's what I'm feeling, right? So self-acceptance and self-love is certainly a worthwhile goal that not all of us are ready to be at yet. Right. And so I think there's a stepwise progression that as a practitioner we have to be very sensitive to, because if we're saying it but we're not believing it, right, it doesn't really work. So
oh, that's so beautiful. Oh my gosh, I cannot wait to learn from you and Alina. Yes.
There's there's EFT, and there's the art of EFT and the science of EFT, and in this digital age, Alina tells this story, and she says, right now, so she had, it's a good story, so that's why I shared it. So she had developed an autoimmune condition a number of years ago, and if she had looked up right now EFT in that condition, she'd have found online lots of scripts like, EFT for arthritis, and EFT for nasal congestion, and EFT for migraine headaches, and whatever. And somebody would give you a script, and even though I have this migraine headache, I accept myself. But it's not specific at all to me and my relationship with why that showed up for me. Yes. So fortunately, when she had looked up EFT back, 15 plus years ago, there was really only one source back then, and that was Gary Craig. And Gary Craig was beautiful and said, look, I can't give you a script because your relationship to that condition is uniquely yours. And Alina knew she had had a stillborn about 6 months before the condition had developed, right? And so she knew that they were connected, but no provider of any type that she explored made that connection. But she knew there was one. And anyway, she ended up finding EFT. She ended up tapping on all the different traumas and stresses related to that, tapped every day until basically the condition was resolved. And the point I make of that is not so much the results for Alina for that, but the importance of being specific with EFT. As Gary used to say, in order to be terrific with EFT, you have to be specific with EFT. So when a person is using tapping, we can often start off with, if I'm having some physical pain, I could just tap on the pain, and that can help a little bit. It does with my chiropractic patients. And then I say, if you really want better and more permanent results, we're going to have to start tapping on the emotions related to it. So how do you feel about this pain? How do you feel about not being able to work? How do you feel about not being able to lift up your grandchild? How do you feel about how it's affecting the intimacy in your relationship? How do you feel about it with relation to work and experiences related to that? And so as we start to dig deeper to this, we feel things and have things because of specific reasons and events that have happened in our life. In other words, our future is usually just a repetition of our past unless we heal or transform or integrate those negative past experiences. So EFT ends up being very individual and very personal and very unique to each person.
And that's what I tell people when I read things on Facebook, or I hear stories about, I went to this practitioner, I went to that practitioner, or I tried this tapping thing and it didn't work for me. Please, you tried global tapping. You just tried the surface tapping. You didn't get down to the specifics.
But they don't know that because that's what they're seeing out there in YouTube land.
Please, people, do not think that what you see on YouTube is EFT.
Because you know what? Here's the inherent problem.
It's global.
Right. The inherent problem is here's the gift. The gift is we have this digital medium, and right now thousands of people are going to listen to this. So I have to somehow be able to speak to the listening of thousands of people.
Yes.
Right? Now, how wonderful is that? That many people are getting exposed and hearing this message and hearing about it. It's huge. It's wonderful. It's amazing. However, can I address the specific issues of, Caroline over there, and can I expect, for Mel over there? I can't. So the problem is if I try to tap with you, I'm going to only be able to kind of do it generally and globally, and, you have to think about what you're feeling about this, and it makes it very hard that way. So the gift of this media is that we can reach many people, and the shadow of that is we can't be specific with any of them.
Right. But then with our loving intentions, we tell people that it's important to find an EFT practitioner who has had real training. That would be yourself, that would be me, that would be people on your website, that would be people on, where? ASAP's website?
Sure. Well, number one is, here's what I would say. The first thing that I always would check is, have they gone through thorough training? Are they certified? And or personal referral, right? So, for example, I have people that contact me all the time of, so people are welcome, number one. If you're listening and you want a referral for somebody in your area, Craig at EFTtappingtraining.com, email me. Right, so that's easy. And then I can give you people that I know specialize in particular areas. So that's one way. If you're looking to really work with a licensed mental health care provider because you've been given a mental health care diagnosis and you're working with PTSD and general anxiety disorder and OCD and other things, then I do recommend that you work with somebody that's licensed. And the best source for that is ASAP. Right?
Yeah.
As far as finding somebody local, and ASAP is energypsych, psych.org, and then there's a membership list. If you're looking for non-diagnosed conditions, AMET, which is AAMET.org, .org, and there's a membership there, and you can look at the maps for your area. So those are different sources, and I think that there are many things that we can tap on our own about once we get some training. So, when I work individually with anybody, part of the first session is always teaching them how to tap on themselves so that they can be working on themselves and tapping in between sessions with me. And I'll always guide them too, that if we're starting to move towards something that what we call a big T trauma, right? And we're starting to look at issues of abuse, and we're starting to look at issues of assault, and we're starting to look at issues right now, depending on what you're saying this, we're dealing with two huge hurricanes about to hit Florida. And I can tell you, I know people that have lived through hurricanes, Alina included, that right now are getting very agitated and are not sleeping and are starting to feel the wave of that coming on before it's even hit. So those kinds of traumas in which life impending, threat to your well-being are not things that I would recommend tapping on yourself about, right? Have somebody that you can work with, that they can either teach you or work with you, so you've got somebody to help regulate you and be able to, when you start really getting emotionally hijacked and intense, you've got somebody to provide that safe holding container for that. So, but I think that there are plenty of things that we can tap on for ourselves, and some things that we shouldn't.
Yeah. Yes, some things that we shouldn't,
yeah.
Unless we have proper guidance, for sure.
Yeah.
Briefly, Craig, can you talk about matrix imprinting? Because that is your shtick.
It's actually matrix re-imprinting. It's
re-imprinting.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, that's fine.
Re-imprinting.
Okay. Sure. So right now there's matrix re-imprinting trainers around the world. There's only 4 in North America. Lena and I are 2 of them. And I love actually what I call the origin story of matrix re-imprinting. So basically, think of it as an advanced or developed form of EFT. And both are equally powerful. They're just different. So one of the original EFT trainer masters, Carl Dawson from the UK, who I love and is brilliant, he was working with somebody one day doing EFT. He was working with a young woman, and they were working with a time from when she was very young, and he had her close her eyes and imagine her younger self as a child. And she was doing that, and he was saying, okay, can you sense her being here? Can you visualize her? Can you kind of contact that part of yourself, that's that young self? And she's like, are you kidding? She is so present. She is so real to me. It's like I could reach out. I could reach out and I could tap on her. She's like right here. And he said, okay, go ahead. And she proceeded to start tapping on her emotionally distraught younger self. Now, that brilliant moment that has led to the development of matrix re-imprinting wasn't like, let's create a new technique that combines EFT and NLP and timeline therapy and internal family system and really comprises a memory reconsolidation technique. Carl didn't do any of that, and yet it does all of that. And so you'll have people that'll come from IFS and timeline and NLP and EFT, and it's like, that's part of what we do, and that's part of what we do, and it just naturally unfolded. And so what matrix re-imprinting does, on one hand, we use concepts of the matrix or the field. So there's an element of quantum physics that we work with, and morphic fields from Rupert Sheldrake. We use elements of heart math because the re-imprinting part, which I'll mention in a moment, takes elements of heart math. We use elements of visualization. In a sense, it's a very light trance work that we're doing because we're tapping on different finger points. So there's many pieces that are integrated into matrix re-imprinting. And what we find it especially useful for is working with trauma. Because when we work with trauma, I have to say, trauma is held very differently than other memories. So when something very bad, so for example, we're not going to go deeply into the ACE study and adverse childhood experience study, but we know from repeated studies that when significant traumas happen to us when we're young, when our nervous system and brain are being wired the way into who we are, the beliefs of who we are and our role in the world and how we think about ourselves in the world, all those things are happening, especially in that 0 to 7 age range. So when traumas happen when we're young, they change us forever. Okay, in other words, we're now set on a new path that leads to significant increase in addictions, in risk of suicide, in heart disease, liver disease, life longevity, and all of these are well documented as far as the long-term effects that result from these early traumas. And the funny thing is, most people think, well, I didn't really have that bad a childhood. I didn't have a trauma. Well, that's, the analogy I'll often say with that is, you know what? If you were walking with your mom at 50 years old and she's still around and you're walking through the mall and all of a sudden you turn around and mom's not there, you're thinking, she probably went to the restroom. Okay, she'll find me in a minute. I'll just sit here and wait here. Not a big deal. But if you're 4 years old and you're with hundreds of people holding hands and all of a sudden she's not there, all of a sudden you are alone, you are scared, you are frightened, you don't know what's going to happen. It actually feels life-threatening to you. And that is a trauma that is wired, that then sets beliefs that are things like, I can't trust people. You never know what's going to happen. Bad things happen, right? So all kinds of beliefs about what did I do wrong? Did I do something wrong that this all happened? And those things get set deeply. So when we work with matrix reimprinting, the advantage of it is that it's what we call a dissociative technique. It's a gentle technique. So rather than when we're tapping feeling all the anxiety and fear of a 4-year-old being abandoned, because that's what it feels like, but by separating and tapping and working with, we're going in and we're connecting with what we call our echo, or that part of ourself that's kind of frozen in time that happened to that trauma. So the part of us that gets traumatized to protect us and save us kind of blips off, dissociates and separates off from us, and continues to live in our field the rest of our lives until it's integrated back in. So imagine that I'm walking through life and I have the 4-year-old that feels abandoned, and I have the 7-year-old that feels like he's never going to be good enough, and I've got the 6-year-old that feels like that no matter what he does is wrong. And now I'm living my life in my adult world, in my relationship, with these feelings and through these filters of not good enough, feeling abandoned, never going to get it right. And my work and my relationships and all those things are seen through those filters.
Yes.
So when we work in matrix reimprinting, we purposely dissociate ourselves. We then come and meet our younger self. We connect with them. We tap with them. We resource them. We give them the worldview of what we have now, a bigger meta perspective of, oh, you know what? You didn't do anything wrong. Are you kidding? That was not your fault. But that 4-year-old didn't know that then. Yes. So we resource them, and just magical healings happen in matrix reimprinting. And then at the end, when that younger self is feeling whole and okay again and happy again, then we do a type of process where we reimprint it into our body, send it out to the field. In a sense, we use the steps of memory reconsolidation to rewire and transform that learning, those decisions, those attitudes that were created then, and transform them into something different. It's not that the event didn't happen, it did, but we rewire, in a sense, the way that we perceive it, feel about it, what we learned about it, what we decided, the attitudes and beliefs that were formed by that. So it's truly remarkable. It's an amazing technique.
Well, I'm coming to Florida in March to learn this.
Okay, good. And
amazing.
Yeah. And people are asking, a lot I get, does EFT help this, or matrix help this? And there's only been 2 studies for matrix reimprinting, but for energy psychology and EFT, there's hundreds of case studies. There's hundreds of case studies. There's, for energy psychology techniques, most of which is EFT, some TFT, and a few others. There's over 50 randomized controlled trials. There's 40 outcome studies with like 98% effectiveness. There's been 4 meta-analyses, 5 systematic reviews, and we're looking, just this year, we're getting the VA listing EFT as at least a level 2, which means that EFT is safe for working with veterans and PTSD. We're seeing Kaiser Permanente journal starting to give, really starting to warm up to EFT. So we're seeing these changes. We're seeing EFT come in schools. We've got studies with EFT on anxiety, depression, academic performance, addictions, phobias, pain, stress, OCD, food cravings, weight loss, trauma and PTSD. And you know what? And so when I first heard about this, and I said, now come on, give me a break. How can one thing do all of those? The breakthrough moment for me was, okay, if stress, can you understand, Craig, that stress can alter or affect your health? Well, that was a no-brainer for me. I know that. There's so many studies that show hundreds of chronic conditions affected by adrenal involvement, stress hormone, cortisol involvement, et cetera. So I'm like, of course. Okay. So if we could affect the level of stress hormones, if we could reduce the stress levels physiologically, could those affect a person's health for a wide variety of conditions? Well, stress can help to promote or cause, or at least increase so many of those conditions. If we decrease the stress hormones, can we affect all those? Okay. And can stress affect a relationship? Well, duh, right? I mean, who doesn't know that? Can stress affect your workplace satisfaction? Can stress affect your spiritual path? Can stress? So all of a sudden, when I started to look at the stress pathway and really started to look at the research and understand that, I was like, so basically, if we can reduce stress levels, anything that stress worsens, if we can reduce the stress, then that can help those. Well, no wonder they're saying that EFT is helping, and they're finding results on all these different phases of life and arenas. So for me, that was a real turning point, but it took a while to really get that and understand that. And then, of course, because I'm a neuroscience geek, I love like looking deeper at it. And now we're starting to get our first MRI studies this past year are starting. We're seeing EFT affecting gene expression. We're seeing EFT affect cortisol production. So we're starting to now get the science to see, well, how does this weird looking thing work in the body? And that's really exciting.
So exciting for me, because for the last 20 years, I've been saying, I want to do this, I want to teach this. And people have been, traditional associations have been going, yeah. But now that the research has come out, people are starting to pay attention.
It's helping, isn't it?
It's helping. So
that's actually why, I mean, that's the motivator why we started. So hopefully within the next 3 to 6 months, you will see the launch of The Science of Tapping, the documentary.
Oh.
So we started 5 years ago, motivated by exactly this. In other words, there's not really a lot of, when somebody comes in to see me, whether it's a chiropractic patient or an EFT client, and they want to share it with their husband, who's an engineer, or they want to show it to their doctor or their therapist or their psychologist, there wasn't like an easy way to show them. And they didn't feel, comfortable with maybe explaining it. It's like, I don't know, it's just like this weird thing, and you do this and you tap on that and it helps, it rewires this, and not everybody's so verbally adept at explaining EFT. And so we said, you know what, we need to do something about it. We need to create something. So the scienceoftapping.com, we're still in our, we're helping to get it funded, and we're now everything is filmed and at the editors. We have people like Joe Dispenza and Fred Gallo and Peter Stapleton, and we have all these people interviewed to basically create something so that people can have something that they can give to their doctor, their husband. If they're a practitioner, they can plug in the science section for 10 or 15 minutes and help to explain what the science is showing. So that's very exciting, and that's a labor of love that I never thought I'd be a documentary film producer person.
Well, thank you to you and Alina and Suzanne and everyone on your team for leading us forward, because you truly are
pleasure.
Movers and shakers in this
and tappers, movers, shakers, and tappers.
Shakers and tappers. Craig, this has been sheer joy. Absolutely fascinating. You have given your time, and the website. Give the best way to contact you again.
Yeah, so we do a lot of things, but what I would say is to find out about trainings and workshops, and on the site is every just about, we try to keep updated all the EFT research, and I give like short summaries of the research. So if you go to EFTtappingtraining.com, you've got hundreds of blogs and audios and interviews and videos and the research. So that's a great way, and check the calendar because we're going to the UK, we teach on the East Coast and West Coast of the US and Canada, Toronto. Anyway, so you can look at upcoming workshops there. If you're interested in the movie and getting updates, scienceoftapping.com there. And if you're a practitioner that already has an EFT background, and you're interested in learning about trauma, we also teach twice a year an online training on trauma called tappingoutoftrauma.com. We look forward to having you be a part of that, Joan.
Say it a little slower again. Tappingoutoftrauma.com.
It is. Thank you.
Okay.
I can talk fast.
I'm taking it, people. I'm taking it.
So anyway, there's lots of ways to play. We have so we have a Facebook group. It's basically Facebook, and EFT workshops is kind of the URL at the end of the Facebook, but you'll have some of those links and things on this.
I'm going to have it all on the graphic.
Yeah. Anyway, lots of ways to play and tap and play. And again, you're welcome to contact me, whether it be for a consult or a referral or just some direction on finding more information. And I'm always happy to help with that.
Yay. And of course, if anybody needs to get a hold of me, I'm everywhere on the planet too. JoanKaler.com. That's it. Go there and you'll find me.
It's great.
Always.
And easy to remember. Yes.
Easy. Yeah. Well, I actually got interested in computers in the late 80s. Got my first computer when I went to graduate school in 91. And then I'm a geek. I'm a therapist, speaker, counselor, consultant geek. Got the JoanKaler.com in 94. I had my first website in 94.
Mm-hmm.
People were even conscious of the power of the internet and what
early adopter. Good.
So, .com is mine. Yeah, nice and simple.
Yeah, that is important, because I hate to even say this, but there's, as a practitioner, there's both the most important part is being of service to our clients and doing a good job.
Yes.
And there's also a business sense. So many people that are in this healing professions don't know how to do the technical pieces and how to actually get the word out there and get the message out so people can find EFT. So we do a lot of mentoring with practitioners to help them get the word out so that we can reach the masses, so that they can avail themselves of this help and know that it's out there. And while it is reaching around the world, we've just, there's still so much further we have to go to have people understand the power of this work.
We'll get there. We are all pioneers in this wonderful healing revolution. As Gary Craig says, the palace of possibilities. It's past its infancy, but there is so much more to learn.
Yeah.
I want to thank you, Craig, so much for your time and these fantastic, your wisdom, the explanations, everyone. I'm telling you right now, this is what EFT is all about. So thank you all. Thank you, Dr. Craig, and thank you everyone out there for listening, for watching. You have our contact information. We want to wish you well. We want to wish you health and happiness and abundance. It's all there for you. So keep tapping. And on that note, I'm going to say goodbye.